We're live. Hey guys, welcome to another one of my podcasts. This is Ananta and Tasshin, who I'm really excited to bring together. Today we want to talk about like community building, and I'm really curious for this conversation. It's like I just want this conversation to happen anyways, but we're recording it, which makes it you know, available for other people to access. But I think of Ananta as like a really like powerful community builder. I know that you've run like Medley in Berlin, but then like I went to Yincubator, which was a 2-month container in Spain, and that was really moving for me. So I'm also just like curious to hear about your journey there. You've also written this really awesome article on community building. So I just have like this general curiosity around what you've experienced with community building. And then Tasshin, we first met. I actually first encountered you through your article about how to use Twitter, and we met soon after that. And then I went into his like Give Your Gift program, which led to my first like IFS film. And since then, that's turned into like Service Guild, which is a whole like creative community, which you can speak more to. But yeah, also a great community builder. And I'm really interested to hear like differing perspectives and also like your stories and experiences. So um, that's what I'm really excited to talk about. But I will let you guys introduce yourselves. So Ananta, do you want to go first?
Sure, yeah. I'm Ananta. Um, I guess like Christine said, I've been exploring lots of community building things for the last, I guess since around the pandemic time. Yeah, I kind of started by accident when I was at my old job back in New York City. Um, and I then took a sabbatical after that, and I was exploring two different threads at that time. So at my job, which was at Sidewalk Labs, which was like Google's smart city project, I ended up learning a lot about like urban development and kind of going really deep into this rabbit hole where I realized that a lot of urban growth that's happening right now, like most of it, the majority of it, is happening in like informal settlements and like self-planned communities and not in the traditional ways where you like, oh, here's some land, let's develop it into these parcels and then add bike lanes and whatever, whatever. It's like people kind of creating like slums or like tent cities or refugee villages, or there's a lot of like movement happening in the world and not enough housing to fit them, and people are having to kind of create their own places to live. So I was like taking a sabbatical to explore that, actually, to um figure out what are different things I could do in that realm. And at the same time, I had had this experience at that job where I basically like took over a team and like turned it around, kind of went from like chaos to this really beautiful, like harmonious, fun team that it turned out to be like very productive and very happy, even in like chaotic changes like the pandemic. So I kind of discovered this gift that I had at that job, and I was like, I kind of want to explore that a little bit more too. Like, what was that? Is that replicable? Could I do it again? Like, how can I like offer this to the world in a more intentional way? Yeah, I was exploring those threads on a sabbatical, and kind of in parallel, my partner, my husband Chris, and our newly met friend Rick Benger in Berlin started planning Medley, which was this like at the time we were describing it like Soho House for vibes, kind of this this sort of urban clubhouse experiment, like third space, that was all about exploring co-creation and collective expression. Um, and yeah, so like the three of our paths kind of like merged at some point, and I was like, oh, I can do a lot of my exploration on these two threads at Medley. And so that's when I ended up actually getting into like community building in the way that we would describe it. I was working on Medley for about a year in Berlin. And yeah, I was just like, we were trying to establish it as a nonprofit entity, and eventually, yeah, kind of got approved to make money for it, but we had like ran out of runway and had to shut it down by then. So yeah, after that, I was still really like curious about um exploring things, and so I ended up doing a lot more like smaller scale projects because I had gotten a little bit burnt out from doing medley and did not want to take on that much responsibility or risk anymore. So yeah, there was the incubator, which was a couple months. There's one I just wrapped up in Berlin that was a month long. I guess we'll call it Let's Fucking Go Club. They're like tinier things along the way too, and then I also ended up just like like traveling a lot and exploring different containers, going to different like pop-up villages and camps and places like shelling points. Okay, I think that's a pretty decent intro for my community building background. And also, I met Tasshin at Vibe Camp 1. He was one of the first few people in Teapot that I met. And then we had some calls and stuff and became more like friends. Yeah.
Hmm. I loved hearing that, Ananta. The word that stood out to me there was chaos. I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. Chaos. Um, um, yeah, for me, I will say in my 20s, I trained at a monastery at the monastic academy. And that was unusual in that it was both meditation training in a monastic container, sort of a Buddhist context, sort of neo-American Buddhist context. They're kind of figuring out their own thing there. But it was also leadership training. And they were trying to create meditators who had deep insight, but also could do real things in the world, like create a nonprofit or create a startup or a company or start a monastery. That was really one of the goals, was to create people who could go on to create monasteries of their own so that it would scale. Um, and then, yeah, I was there for 5 years in two stints. 2 years, left for a year, came back for 3 years, and then left in 2021. Um, and I had been on Twitter since 2007, actually, tweeting pretty continuously through that time, but more and more with each passing year. And so I doubled down on Twitter that year and was just like, used Twitter as a way to figure out what I wanted to do next and who I wanted to become. And I started my pilgrimage. And over the first year of my pilgrimage, I found 3 areas that I wanted to spend my life working on, which I called love, curiosity, and empowerment. It's a little bit like having 3 part-time jobs that I spend time on each of those each week. Um, and as soon as it became clear that I wanted to work on those themes, I started, I would say, categorizing the collaborations that I was already doing and also new collaborators that I was connecting with in those terms, where it's like, oh, this is a love collaborator, this is a curiosity collaborator, this is an empowerment collaborator. Initially, we were calling it Tasshin Inc., as if it was like a company and there are 3 departments. That's why we call them departments, where there's those 3 themes. And that we changed the name to the Service Guild in 2023. That felt like a more aligned name for it. And the core overlapping theme is fun service projects related to those themes. I do hope that in the future we'll have future departments related to other service-oriented themes like peace or creativity or earth or wisdom. Those are ones I would particularly like to have in the future. Yeah, so I've been working on the Service Guild for more than 3 years now in different forms, and it kind of feels like a 3-year-old toddler to me, where it's like, it's not a baby anymore. Uh, but it's also not
Oh,
5, and it's not 10, and it's not 15, and it's not 20. Um, and I have to be a good steward or parent to it. Um, and I've loved that process. It's been very joyful work for me, and I've learned so much. And yeah, community building is an enormous part of that, finding collaborators to work with and finding who we want to connect with and support. And I'm excited to be talking to you both about this.
Awesome. And how big is the service guild right now? Because I think I joined when it was smaller, and now it's, like, grown steadily.
Hmm.
Like
So that what you joined is a program of the empowerment department that's called the Give Your Gift Community. That's centered around a Discord. That Discord has like 33, 35 people, something like that right now. The Service Guild itself depends how you count, but has, I would say, 11 or 13 people right now that are in the core.
Mm.
And those are across the departments where, I'm in each of the three departments, and there's 6 people total, including me in the love department, 3 people, including me in the curiosity department, 3 people, including me in the empowerment department. And then there's 2 other people that I'm working closely with that are not yet members, but will probably join next year.
Very cool. And then Yincubator was, like, a bunch of people over 2 months, right? Like, 20?
Mhm. Yeah, it was, I guess if you count us as facilitators as well, it was about 26 people over 2 months.
Yeah. My experience of both of these is that they're, like, highly curated spaces too. Like, part of what made Incubator work so well for me is, that the people were so, like, incredible, and I know that it was,
Awesome.
like, a highly curated guest list, and then and yeah, I get a similar sense from Service Guild where it's, like, there's, like, yeah, like, a very curated membership where the people who do go there are, like, committed to, like, creating and working on their projects. Huh, okay, so I'm curious to hear, like, what you're, like, going for with the containers because and I'll, like, say a spiel first, but, like, in my mind, Service Guild, is, like, this structure that allows people to, like maybe this is actually the Discord, but, it's it's a container that allows people to, like, pursue their, like, U-shaped work, as you described it, projects that are shaped around their essence and like your like the universe as uh as channels through your specific existence, your limbs, your spirit, whatever forms you, what does that turn into as a project? And I feel like you create this scaffolding around it where it's like, oh, you guys have stand-ups or whatnot. Love to hear like yeah, like, the spirit there, and then Ananta, I feel like with the incubator, there is so much, like, space for experimentation. It was like, "Oh, we can, lay the conditions so that, first of all, we make sure that we are, like, attuned and aligned." That felt like a big part of the incubator for me, like, it's called, like, Yincubator because it's about, like, not just being productive and, like, we're doing things, but, like, starting with almost, like, emptiness and silence and listening into what actually beckons instead of, um, just charging into, like, "I wanna do this project and that project and that project." And then from that space, it also felt to me like this strong sense of psychological safety that allowed people to feel safe enough to, like, try plant these little seeds of what they might want to do and then experiment with that in, like, a safe container. Um so this is, like, my take, but I'm, like, curious what you guys want to say about, like, your your respective containers and maybe, like, the philosophy or something around it. Yeah.
I feel like just real quick that part of what you're applying but not fully saying is I liked the frame for this conversation that almost um, like a character of it would be like Tasshin is very yang and Ananta's very yin, and that creates like different approaches to the same kinds of things. And obviously it's a yin yang, and that we have the other characteristic as well. But I found that frame very useful and interesting and
Okay.
resonant, and I'm
Yeah.
curious about how to do it in a more yin style. So, uh, yeah, I just want to stir that into the conversation.
Yeah, great. I think, yes, this is a great way to frame it. I didn't want to, like, pigeonhole you guys into it, but, like, yeah, you wanna speak to that with, like, service skills?
Yeah, please pigeonhole us, Christine.
I'm okay with
Take
it.
it.
I am very
Yeah.
young, and I do need to learn more how to do yin style things. And I look up to Ananta and yourself, Christine, as people that are able to do that.
Yeah, and I also think, like, I really enjoy, Tasshin, like, your writing on, like, strategy and frameworks, and I think that also, like, is very evident in the way you run, like, Service Guild.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I like that framing too. I also like that they're like impossible to separate in some ways, so it makes like exploring that tension is really fun too. You want to go first, Tashin? Talking about your
Um,
container.
sure. Well, yeah, I just want to say again that what you're referring to, Christine, is specifically from the empowerment department. And it's also just one of the programs or offerings that we have.
Okay.
There are other offerings from the empowerment department. And there are other offerings from the other departments. Um, so what you are, and for us, empowerment is about having a calling or what we call a vow and helping people with that. And so that is very like project focused. Very doing focused, very like service focused, and the other departments have other
Oh,
concerns. I think for me, subjectively, um, a guiding direction has been like, I know what I want to work on. I know what I'm here to do at this point. I had done the work to know myself and like figure out what kind of work I wanted to do in the world. And also that I didn't really want to do work in the ways that were offered to me through like traditional jobs or stuff like that. At least at the time, I was trying to find my own way to do things. And I wanted to find collaborators in each of those themes who really got it. Like all the people who are in the Service Guild, they really get what love is or what curiosity is or what empowerment is almost intuitively. Like we've developed shared language or models for how to talk about it, but they already get it. And they're also people that I vibe with, that I enjoy and respect and want to spend time with, and where it's fun to work with them. And that's a really important part for all of us, is that it's fun for us to work on these projects. And really that's why we're doing it, not necessarily for money or status or fame or something. It's like because we genuinely want to, and it's genuinely fun for us. So it's been such a gift to find 11, 12 people who really get an aspect of something that I want to work on and are really fun to work on with it, and who are also dedicated to doing it over the long term. Like I do think about it a bit like dating to marriage, where it's like you go on several dates and then if it keeps working, then you build up the relationship over time. And like Mary, for example, when we started talking, Mary Bjork, it was like, let's work together for 30 or 40 years. Like she is basically my work partner. She's like the mother of the guild and I'm like the father of the guild. And uh, she's not going anywhere and I'm not going anywhere. And um, if there were like marital issues, we know how we would deal with that and how we'd work with that. And that feels so good. And that's really the internal subjective experiences. Like these themes are what I want to work on, and these are the people I want to work on it with. And we're going to do it for a long time and just keep going and keep building over year after year.
lovely. I have some
Oh.
questions, but I wanna hear Ananta.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. It was nice to hear you share that. Um, yeah, so with the incubator, I feel like I also sometimes have the type of clarity that Tashin's talking about of like, oh, I know what I need to be doing right now. I'm just gonna like lock it in and like, do it. Um, but I also sometimes don't. I like kind of go through these cyclical stages where like at some point the thing I'm doing is like no longer the thing. Um, and I need to kind of let it go, let it die, and figure out what to do next. And I think like I've gone through this cycle enough times to realize like the first few times it was very disorienting because it would be like the destruction of all these things that I identified with, and
Mhm.
letting that go was very distressing. So it would kind of lead to like loss of identity and a lot of like distress and like depression, and I just wouldn't know how to like navigate that. Um, but kind of after swimming in the unknown like enough times, sort of realized that like I could just like own that process, and it could be really graceful, like to just sit and like listen without acting. Kind of like um I really love this image that Sylvia painted. I don't know if you guys have seen that, of like someone putting their finger up into the air and
Yes.
with one hand and like painting with the other. But yeah, to mix a few metaphors here, I think it's also just kind of like listening for the wind before you like put the sails up, and like once you know which way it's going, then you can like know how to navigate against that. But that process, which like I feel pretty comfortable with it on my own now, but it's still really uncomfortable to go through that process in like society. Like, I think a lot of like in New York, for example, and you meet someone, like the first thing they ask you is like, "What do you do?" And like if you don't really have a question, an answer for that question, it can be really like, "Fuck, what am I doing with my life? How do I like meet people? Who am I?" You know, like it can be really uncomfortable to be in the world in such a like raw, unknown state. Um, and so for the incubator, I was like in collaboration with a few of my friends who are like kind of we're at similar stages and have a similar kind of appreciation of the process. Um, yeah, we're basically building like a cocoon to be able to let the snow globe settle and just like listen for what is it that like wants to be expressed, wants to come out of us. Um, and to be able to, yeah, come out of that experience with clarity that we could then like use our more yang sides to work towards later in the year. And yeah, so that was like the guiding principle was like, okay, we want to create this environment for ourselves. Like, what are, you know, who can and can't be in it in order to like, like if people don't buy into that premise, then they shouldn't be there, for example. But if that's something that people like really genuinely are hungering for, they would be like a great addition to the container. So a lot of the curation of who was there and who wasn't, it wasn't even about like the people themselves and our relationships to them. It was also about like how would they interact with that like field that we're trying to create. Yeah, I'll leave there.
Yeah. I also want to say that you guys can ask each other questions if you're like, "Oh, that sounded interesting." I feel like I saw a question spark up in Tashin's eyes. Maybe
I have
maybe
one
you're
now actually, which is I would
yeah.
be curious to hear from Christine how she would describe her experience at Incubator. And like I've heard good things about it, and I heard good things about Medley in the past, of course, but I want to hear from Christine like what that was like for her to put that in the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I had met Ananta once I before you invited me to the incubator, and then I was like, "Yes, I'm definitely going." And I think it's because, like yeah, like, the spirit of it really called to me, which is, like, um so I used to do these solo retreats every year around New Year's, where I would basically go into it began in my apartment, but then I, like, one year went into, this, like, yurt in the middle of the woods, and I had no Wi-Fi, no phone service, and just wanted, like, silence, like the dead or, like, the bottom of the year, and I just wanted to, like,
Yeah.
be with myself. Um, and I loved it, but I did get a little scared during that solo retreat because I was really out in the middle of nowhere. I yeah, I felt, like, a little scared and lonely at times because there was, like, a person who would come and, like, help me with the fire, but I was like, "What if he murdered me?" So I was looking to do, like, a sabbatical of sorts, or like a creative retreat, but I wanted to be, like I wanted that, space for, like, emptiness and solitude, and just, like, tuning into, like, the void. And Ananta sent me this Google Doc, and it's called, like, Incubator, and, like, the first thing was, like, "Oh, the first 2 weeks is just going to be, like, quiet." And we're going to create space for, um, just, like, being and resting. I was like, "This sounds fantastic." Um and after these, like, first 2 weeks, I think it, like, moved into more, like, allowing space for, like, young energy, creation, projects, and whatnot. So I immediately signed up for, like, the first 2 weeks is what drew me. So, like, the yin is what drew me, I would say, like, that, guiding principle of, like, we have to start from this space of, mm, reflection, introspection, listening to yourself, and making sure you're aligned. Um, I'm kind of curious, Tashin, because I feel like you're like, "I know what I wanna do," and then you're, like, going into it, and I'm curious, like, was that process how is that process like for you, and does it change, or does it feel like you have set your compass and you're, like, set on this, like you said, for, like, 30, 40 years? Because I've also, yeah, I've experienced, like, really loving something and being like, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna do this for, like, a lifetime," you know? So, like, there is that sense
Mm,
of, like, internal alignment that I've experienced as well. But yeah, what I really enjoyed about Incubator was showing up and having so much space to, um, be with, like, my intuition. I was developing my relationship to intuition at this time too, so I was like, "What is intuition? Like, what is that? What is this muscle?" And I feel like I've developed it now, like, over this year,
mm.
and it feels the metaphor in my mind is like that of scent, because I kept, like, trying to look with my eyes, and I was like, "I don't see it, like, I don't know. What am I supposed to see?" And it feels to me like, for me, intuition is sort of like, you, like, smell food around the corner, but you can't see it yet, but you have some, like, inkling of it. There's, like, a
Mm,
hunch,
mm.
and then you, like, go around the corner and you see the meal and you're like, "Ah, yeah, like, I had some kind of, like, intuition that there might be food here, but, like, I hadn't practiced this." And it's really hard for me to kinda settle into that state of, like, faith or trust in, like, this sense that I'm not used to leaning on. So I've been developing that muscle, and I think my time at the incubator definitely helped me with, like, um, even seeing people practice, like, I feel like there's, a lot of being in the body, like meditation or, like, there's, like, tantric massage or dance, and, like, Ananta was always, like, making music and this, um, like, a really strong sense of being with your essence or just, like, being present, and later, we actually had a lot of, discussions about yin and yang, so I think it'd be fun to talk about, but there would be, like, moments where someone would, like, really want to, like, charge into something, and they'll be like, "No, like, we're not there yet." And then eventually, I felt like there was, like, at least 1 or 2 weeks where everyone was creating. Like, I made these films, like, Simon and Nikki were, like, creating visions for, like, I don't know, they're, like, job searching or, like, looking for, like a vision or a plan for, like, creating a nonprofit. There's a lot of talk about how do we bridge the yin and yang, like create a center for your, like, inner and outer work. And yeah, I think another really strong aspect of my experience at Incubator was that it felt like, um, there was a higher than critical mass, um of self energy amongst the participants. And so it felt like a really healthy fabric where you could have all these emotions, you could show up authentically, um, and it would be held in a very safe and secure way. So yeah, like when Ananta says it was like a cocoon, I like definitely felt that. And there was fun experimental workshops that came out of it. Like maybe ran, like, her breath one of her earlier, like, breathwork sessions, Laws did, like, an experimental dance workshop that felt like we were it was very, like, psychoactive for me. It felt like we were all just,
Mm.
like these, like, animal parts of us were, like, emerging, but we were all doing it together. So, yeah, that was kind of a blurb, but, I really enjoyed it. I felt like I made really good friends. Um, I want it to happen again. Um, yeah, does that satisfy your curiosity, Tashin, about that?
Well, my curiosity is never satisfied, but that was an excellent answer. Thank you.
I don't know if you wanna add on to that, Ananta. I also have, like, some more questions and just areas to get into.
Um, no, I have a question for Tashin.
Yeah.
Um, 'Cause I guess I spoke about the cycles of, like, listening and acting, and, um, you mentioned that you had a period of time in your life where you, like, did explore, and then it seems like you had, like, kind of maybe one of those cycles, but on, like, it was maybe bigger, like, you had a really solid chunk of time maybe where you did that, and then you kinda just came at it with so much clarity that you're just, like, charging forward on that. Is that, like, a fair read?
Yeah, that feels fair. I would describe it retrospectively and internally as there was something that was really clear but implicit and not explicit, and like I was already doing the thing,
Mhm,
but what it was that I was doing was not clear to me. And if anything, honestly, the period of introspection that led to it was me being in solitary retreat for the first half of 2020. I kind of hit the
mhm,
limit of who I was and who I thought I was and what my story about my life was. And then everything, it took another about 8 months for things to break. But I was like, oh, I shouldn't be at the monastery. Actually, I need to be
mhm,
in the world now. I don't even know why, but I'm being called to be in the world and this isn't working for me anymore. I was very confused leaving the monastery. It was very painful, very tragic. I'm
mhm.
reminded actually in this conversation with this theme of my friend Jane's work with death and the way that she talks about death. It was like
Mhm.
being in the cabin was very deathy. She uses this adjective deathy. It's like being in the cabin was very deathy.
Love that.
Leaving the monastery was very deathy. And then the beginning of my transition into my pilgrimage and the first year of that, I'd say was very birthy, where it was like there
Mhm,
was something that was being born, that was being gestated, and it was not a death. It was a clarifying and a series of milestones of clarification where I was not dying at that time. I was being born as this person. If anything, I'm in a death chapter now where like something is coming to a close. And I'm okay with
mhm,
cycles of birth and death and growth.
mhm,
But a big part of that was realizing, hey, I know myself pretty well at this point. I was turning 30 in 2021, and I don't know everything about myself, but like love and curiosity and empowerment are things I'm going to care about for the rest of my life. I don't see that changing such that I'm willing to tattoo them to my body. Like I'm not going to change that. That's important to me, and no matter what the world changes or how I change, I'm still going to try to be a kind person. I'm still going to try to learn and grow. I'm still going to try to support other people around me, and
mhm,
what that looks like specifically might change, but those themes are just such recurring themes in my life that I can't see them changing fundamentally, even if I change or the world changes or what projects I work on change or who I work with changes. It's like
mhm,
I'm still going to care about love and curiosity and empowerment. The words might even change. Like it's the thing that's beyond before that that's not words. I know myself that's really who
mhm.
I am. That's my vow.
Yeah.
That's what a Tasshin is.
Awesome.
Mhm,
I'm curious if you guys have run into going back to like the yin yang thing. Like, I'm curious what the frictions you run into are like in community. Like Tashin, do you feel like you subscribe to like taking a more young approach? Have you run into like friction with like collaborators where they're like not as clear on wanting to run in that direction? I know not to like maybe in Yincubator, like discussions around like yin yang approaches to collaborating on projects. Yeah, just pointing in that direction. Does anything come up for you guys?
yeah, I've done both. I've worked in, like, a more young way, more, like, kind of I'd say more traditional, more, like, structured, more, like, "Here's a plan, let's, like, work towards it." And then I've also worked in a more yin way, which is very, like, okay, sensing into, like, what wants to happen and, like, flowing with it and just being willing to, like, adjust as you go all the time. Um, and they actually both work really well. Where it doesn't work is when you have, like, a mixed
Oh,
group.
really? That's not what I expected.
Um,
Hmm.
like, if half your team is trying to do one way and half is trying to do the other way, it causes, like, a lot of tension. It's not great.
That's interesting. because in my mind, like, the way I do it is a mixture of both, but that's within
Mhm,
me, right? Like,
mhm.
I start with yin and I just run with something like I felt really good about a certain direction for a while, and then I sense something was off, right? And then I have to like go back into like the yin and make sure that I'm aligned. Um, but you're saying within a team, if there's people who are like more yeah, wanting to take things like ground up from like flow, and then there's like the other half who just wants to like charge with a certain direction, like that mixture doesn't work well.
Yeah, I don't wanna say that's always true, but just, like, from
Yeah.
my sample size of, like, one of each, basically. I think, yeah, if someone does not really, like, value or like jive with the flowy way as much, it's very frustrating for them to be constantly it feels like everyone's flaking on them, basically. It's like, "Oh, we had this plan, we agreed this was gonna happen on this day,
Yeah.
and now you're just, like, constantly dropping the ball." Um, and vice versa, if you're, like, trying to do the flow thing and someone is just like, "Hey, we had a plan, we're gonna do it," but it's, like, the wrong thing, it's, like, super frustrating because then you're just doing things that are, like, really out of alignment. So,
Yeah. How do they feel when someone's, like, being like, what is the yin perspective that you seem like it's, like, they're being too forceful or, like
um, yeah, it's like it almost feels like they're being, like, unreasonable maybe? Like, "Yeah, we said this before, but, like, something changed, so we should adjust," like that.
yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, so a lot of mutual frustration.
That's really funny.
I got the sense of you just now as like being bilingual in two different languages, yin and yang, and you can speak both of them. And like, I felt a lot of resonance with how you described the yang experience, and then it helped me to empathize with someone who's in a yin perspective. And I appreciated that translation. Thank you.
Cool, yeah. Yeah, I went from being very young most of my life to, like, just going, like, totally opposite pole and, like, pendulum swing and just exploring that very deeply. I don't necessarily think, like, yin is the way and you should always be yin or whatever. It just happens to be, like, I think that's very worth exploring, and it feels kind of underexplored, as
Hmm.
a possibility. So yeah, I went really deep into that, and now I'm just trying to, you know, have both tools in my toolbox.
Yeah. I think and I'm also curious, Tashin, like, kinda same question around, like, pointing at, like, friction points or things you've experienced, but, from, like, my perspective, kind of falling onto what you were saying, Ananta, it's like, I think I can be very young, but also, like, if I'm only like if I'm aligned, we can charge. We can go like so fast, right? So hard. Like I will like lock in and grind, like but if I'm not, like if there isn't like total if there isn't that like some level of conviction and someone is trying to push me on it, then I feel like there's way more friction and I'm like, "Wait, like there needs to be space for me to make a decision, to pause, to like think on it." Like you can't force the alignment or the conviction. So, yeah, for me it's almost like, "Oh no, like there's still some like Rubik's cubing that's needing to happen here. We can't just run with it because then that's like the wrong direction. But I've also experienced like frustration on the other side of like, why is this person taking forever to reach like alignment? Like, they're not doing anything. There's like inaction. So, yeah, it's, like, fun to see in group environments, and I think my friend Priya does a really good job, actually, of balancing this where, like, if she senses, like, hesitation or concern, it's, like, totally okay, like, she does not push it, she just presents the facts, and if you say no, she's, like, okay with that too, like, and I love that about how
Mm,
she handles things. I feel like both Priya and Angie, like, they do a really good job of, like, if it's a no, it's a no. Like, they, like, just swallow the costs
mm,
of anything.
mhm.
And, sometimes for me, I, like, will, like, be like, "Oh, I don't wanna, like, swallow, like, I don't wanna accept the cost of saying no to something, right? Or I don't want to like face certain consequences. But if it's like we take the stance of no, like you pick a direction, and if it's this one, then you just have to like eat that cost, and that's okay. Um, so I find that like having that mindset actually makes things a lot faster for me, where I'm like, "Oh, okay, like I just have to like pay a certain amount to go this direction." So,
Oh.
um, but yeah, Tasha, any thoughts here?
Hmm. Many. I think what's coming up is that I think things are working well for me and the Service Guild insofar as I actually do and have learned some yin things over the years. Like the Taoist model of conditions consequences is really important for us. And like fingertip feeling, Fingerspitzengefühl from German strategy. But also just like
Lots.
shared context, having lots and lots of conversation. Like one person that I collaborated with was like, why are we having so many conversations about stuff? And it's like, well, because we need to get that shared alignment and really understand each other and understand what we care about. And like Mary and I, for example, even though we've worked together for a long time, we've had so many conversations about how do we think about these things and what are the mental models that we've developed together over time about how we think. And so then when it's time to do a project, there's already so much shared context that we can just run and be like, well, yeah. And also building, I don't know, like also building a shared gestalt of how we collaborate at the Service Guild. Like everybody at the Service Guild knows that we use standard operating procedures. That's really important to me. Everybody knows that they should have a task manager and that they should be responsible for actually doing what they say that they'll do. And you don't have to say you'll do anything in particular, but if you say you're going to do it, then you should do it. And then we should trust you that you're going to act on that. And so
Mm.
I think there actually is a bit of a balance of yin and yang in some ways. And then there's a lot that I'm already learning from this conversation from both of you about how we can do that better. But um, yeah, that's the main thing that's coming up for me is realizing the ways in which we are already somewhat yin and why the yang works the way that it does because those things are in place.
I really love the standard operating procedures, Tashin. I think we talked about it last time we got coffee. I'm making one for parties, for throwing
Amazing. I need it.
events for art parties. Yeah, I'm writing an article. Well, I actually already wrote it, but I'm waiting for my collaborator to respond. But I might just post a version of it on Substack anyways, because it's like my framework, I guess. But it feels really powerful to like structure something and be like, oh, do you want to throw another party like this? Here is the structure. Follow it, like,
Mhm.
and it will help you
Totally.
make sure everything's in place. And I have done things like that at work, but for some reason I haven't done it for things like community building or like throwing a party, for example. I'm kind of curious if there's anything around that, around like life design or like friendship. But I'm not sure if doesn't feel obvious to me compared to like hosting a party and making sure all your like, ducks are in a row.
I'm reminded that I love to invent words and I love to make new words. And one of the words that I've invented through my work is fun professional,
Mhm.
which to me means, hey, we're doing something fun that's in accordance with our aliveness, with it's resonant for us, that we feel eros towards. It's life-giving to do this thing, but we want to do it in a way that's excellent, that's competent, that's skilled, that has the quality of professionalism that work is holding as a standard, but it's about something that we're genuinely enlivened by and having the best of both worlds of like a work environment where it's excellent and it's well done and there's expectations of this is going to be good, but it's about something that we care about genuinely. And so like a party is a great example of that, of like you're doing a party because you want to have fun and you want to bring people that you like together to do something cool. But like a party is better if it's well run and it's well thought
Yeah.
through and it's structured and it could be anything. It doesn't matter what it is, but like this is how I run a party well is a great thing to have an SOP for. And I need it. There's parties I want to run. So I want to read your Substack article and I want to use it.
Amazing.
One thing I've been thinking about along that theme also is using structure to then be able to put myself in a yin place and like relax into it. Um,
Mhm.
like for example, having to reinvent a party every time is like really hard. Or like for me, the example that is like most relevant right now is cooking because I'm traveling. And so I don't have any of my systems in place for like groceries and how I do meal prep and like all that stuff. And so it's like having to reinvent every day the process of like getting the right balance of nutrients, sourcing them, putting together, like, whatever. Um, and yeah, like I kind of think of it as like creating a system, like using structure to create a system where then I don't have to like think about it and then I can like have fun with it every day as like a really fun interplay of that like yin and yang, where like without the structure, having to just like flow with whatever's happening is like kind of like a lot. It's like a big burden to carry.
Do you want to speak to what a standard operating procedure is, Tasshin, or like how you've been using it?
Sure. They're basically a fancy checklist. I have a blog post about them that people can read, but the idea is that there's a template of this is how we run a party, for example.
Mhm.
And then every time you are using it, you copy the checklist and make an instance of it and use the checklist. And then after you use it, you typically make improvements to it so that it gets better for the future. And that if it's well written, it means that like, say one of you was in the service guild, I could hand you an SOP, and if it's a good SOP, you'll be like, oh, this, even though I've not done this particular SOP before, I like get it. I understand why it's structured this way. I can use it effectively and then even make improvements to it that are included for the future. So, it results in a really high degree of competence at whatever we do. And so we probably have, I think, like 80 SOPs at this point for different
Oh.
things in the service guild. And it's like, that's probably one of our most valuable resources, that we've built up
Mhm.
these amazing SOPs that get better all of the time and that everyone in the service guild knows how to use them. And um, there's some training involved. Typically people have some resistance to them at first because it's kind of annoying to use them and it's annoying to make them. But then there comes a point where someone realizes, oh, this made my life so much better that I am willing to always use SOPs because everything just goes better. Because the mind can't hold that much detail. No, it's like complicated to hold all of that detail, and so an SOP
Mm.
externalizes that and like sets you up for success to do things better that are complicated. And yeah, I'm really proud of the SOPs that we've made. I'm proud of our team for being people that want to use them and are willing to use them, and I'm proud that we improve them over time. And I want to seed them into the ecosystem. Like
Mhm.
I brought them to Fractal recently. Fractal Tech hired me to bring SOPs to Fractal Tech, and I'm not 100% sure how that's going, but like I want more people to use them more of the time.
Mm.
How is it being used at
What's
Fractal Tech? Or sorry.
Well, they're a business, so they need to like onboard people, or they need to like welcome new
Oh, yeah, yeah.
people at the boot camp, or like I don't even know what all of their SOPs are, but there's enough scale and complexity, which is like complexity for complicatedness, that it makes sense to um, have checklists for how to do all that stuff.
um wait, I have two questions. Um the first one is I want to know what your favorite SOP is. And the
Mm.
second one is wait, what's the difference between complexity and complicatedness?
It actually has to do with yin and yang, and that complexity is about things that are emergent or are unknown, where there's not a known solution in advance. Like this podcast, for example, is complex because anything involving people is complex, where it's like we didn't 100% know what we were going to talk about or how we were going to relate to each other, how it was going to go. It's emergent, right? What we've talked about. And
Mm-hmm.
complicated things are well known, well understood, but they're involved. Like the metaphor I always use is they're like a headache, where like
Mm-hmm.
if a refrigerator broke, there's probably a known solution to that, but it's annoying to do yourself, and you might want to hire someone to do it. And there's a sequence of steps you need to go through to fix a
Mm-hmm.
refrigerator. Um, so complexity is for things that are complicated, whereas complexity is for things that are complex or emergent.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah. Favorite SOP? I don't know. My podcast, writing a blog post. We're running a retreat that we've run 2 times before next week, and that's probably our most involved one. That's like it's a year-long process to run this SOP, and so that's really proud of that one. Yeah, and I think if more people are using SOPs too, we can exchange. Like I want to read Christine's one so that I can run parties that are better. And yeah.
Well, also like so my framework, I'm calling it a framework, is not a checklist, but
Mm-hmm.
you said something which was like, what is the form? What is the form? Like, let's say someone wants to throw a party. What's the form they have to fill out?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that because then it's not just like a checklist of like, have you done this? Have you done that? Right? It's like, here is, here are all the considerations. What is your answer for that, for this particular instance? It's sort of like a
Totally.
master template. And then you have like your instance and you're like, this is like the theme for this party. Here is like the visual symbolic language. Here are the decorations. Here is like the music, like the seed song or something, you know? And then and you can like see an example of one I did in the past, and then it's like, oh, now here's like this new instance of it. Um, it feels very much like having like a database, sort of like you have like your meta fields, metadata, and it's like what it's very important to know the metadata, like what are the fields you have to like fill out in your table of, you know, parties that you're throwing.
Hmm.
And I wonder if there's something, yeah, I know for like I don't is there like a repository or like a freely it must be like through word of mouth because I guess these are like valuable assets, but it's like, hey, community builders, where are all your spreadsheets? Where is all the documentation? Like, let's swap them around. Like, I'm sure Brooke, she runs Vibe, you know, I'm sure there's
I've
so
seen
many
some of
assets
theirs.
like
They're
that.
really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Um, but maybe it's not freely shared because it's like valuable content.
Yeah, I share mine. We hold ours in Notion, and
Yeah.
I share ours on a case by case basis with the people. I'm happy to share them generally, but
Yeah.
um,
It's not
you know, some of
open.
them it'd be like, I'm not ready to share this publicly. There's something that BI, who I work with in the love department to do our meta dance parties. Our meta dance parties are also very involved SOP that we've worked on for years that we're always iterating. And something we did recently is we made a public version of it with a blog post that says how to run your own meta dance party. And then we made within that, there's a link to like a simplified version of the checklist that doesn't have as many details and is a little bit like less context dependent. And so that's something I could see us doing more of, where we make like a public version and a service guild version. And I'd love to see more people doing things like that.
Yeah, I feel like so the SOPs is one example of something that like is doing really well, right, Tasshin? This is something.
What isn't going well?
Well, I'm actually curious to both. Like,
Yeah.
what works really well in these like creating these containers, having hosting like is it like a 2 month, like a multiple month retreat? Like what works really well, and then like what doesn't work well.
Yeah, I think I would like to speak to that. One of the things that I love about what I would call the path of service, or like karma yoga, which is, I know I switched from like a contemplative meditation path in my 20s to like doing stuff and being of service primarily in my 30s. And one thing that I love about that is like, no matter how well things are going or how good you are at something, whatever you're not good at or whatever you find challenging, the world will just show you that and be like, you need to do better at this. And so like for me, for example, in this conversation, this feels like the world very gently saying, hey, Tasshin, it would be great if you were better at yin stuff. Like, yes, you've got a little bit of it, but like, please learn how to do this better so that you can be a better leader that supports people who need that, or contexts that are well served by that. That's something I think that looks like, yeah, me forcing or rushing or pushing, like you were talking about. And also people who don't know that they need to like pause and reflect, I think, or like people, it's really important for me to work with people who know their yes and know their no. And like, it doesn't go well when people don't know their yes or no. And, you know, you can't do that for someone. You can't, because it's their yes and it's their no. It's also slow going. Like I would love to go 100 times faster than we're going, but it's taken time to build up, and the things that a 3-year-old is capable of just aren't the things that a 5-year-old is capable of, or a 20-year-old. And I can already see what we could do when we're 40 or 50. And sometimes I feel impatient of like, we could be doing bigger, better stuff, but um, it takes time. And in fact, I've come to really value going slowly, like really slowly. I think that's part of how you get a cult, actually, is like just going too fast. And so I'm in the kind of business where I have to be careful about not starting a cult and not having people be overly devoted to me or the service guild or the departments, or having behavior patterns that just aren't working for people, or that my blind spots become systemic in a larger structure. It's like, that's a headache for me, how to avoid that. And I've thought a lot about it. And I'm still going to make mistakes and I'm still going to hurt people, and that's painful to know that just comes with the territory. It's messed up, but you just have to go ahead and do stuff anyway. It's like Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. Like, you are on the battlefield, so you have to do something. There's a lot of, and within that, there's a lot of little things that didn't go well or things that I learned from, and I could talk endlessly about that. But I just love that, actually, about the work, because that's the way in which you grow and have to learn. And that's one of the big motivators for me, is to grow and learn over time rather than just being stagnant. And so it's hard, but it's worth it for me in that. And yeah.
Yeah, that's super relatable about having everything mirrored back to you, like no matter what you're doing. Yeah, I'd say like, okay, over time in all my explorations, I've become a lot more like precise in what it is that I'm doing and what I'm not doing. And that has made such a difference in things that used to not go very well and things that go like extremely well now. So, like as an example, like when I was doing Medley, I kind of realized like, wait, I actually don't really like interfacing with strangers. And that's like so much of what you have to do when you're running a third space. Like people would kind of like DM me, and like my internal nervous system is just like, why are they DMing me? And that's just like not like, don't put yourself in a position where strangers are DMing you as like you know your work, if that's not something that is like kind of joyful for you. And so over time, I've kind of just gotten to know my own edges a lot better. And like, sure, I could work at these things and kind of, be more like, I'm going to learn how to be better with that stuff. But actually, my strategy has just been to like figure out like what are the things that feel more joyful to me, and how do I like create the things that I want to create without coercing myself in that way. And yeah, that has been really good. I feel like I've ended up in like a really kind of niche place where I'm not like, I'm definitely experimenting every time. I'm not really trying to create like lasting institutions, which is, I think, a little bit different than like a lot of other, traditional community builders out there. And yeah, in my like prototypes, I'm like often working with people within 2 degrees connection to me who are very like trusted. I don't really create public events anymore. I haven't in a few years. Um, yeah, just things like that. I've like kind of gotten more and more into like a very specific niche as I've gotten to understand myself better.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, knowing what you want to host, and then when people show up that are not aligned with you on that attention, it's like, hey, sorry, this is not the space for you. And like what you're looking for, this is not it. Like, that helps so much. Um, and I think it was hard for me before, because I would be like, oh, well, maybe the audience wants this from me, you know? And now I'm like, oh no, like I can set up the conditions, like it's like a combination of like doing the pre-work of like, yeah, setting up your event or designing it, and then when people show up with like different expectations, like being like, hey, no, like that's not what this is. And then the only people who are left are the ones that like are here for what you have to give, and then it works really well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm also kind of curious, Tashin, like, because something you said earlier, like, do you feel like you are very much working with people who like know what they want to do, like they've gone through like the self-reflection and now they're like working on their thing.
Hmm. I'll answer that, and then I would love to ask Ananta a question quickly too, if that's okay. Um, I I wish I could show this image, but for my birthday I did a tarot reading. I often do a tarot reading, and one of the cards that I drew is advice and for the year ahead, and um, two cards actually fell out, and it was like, oh, okay, well that's meaningful. And one of them I interpreted as advice for me personally as an individual, and then one of them I interpret as advice for me insofar as I'm the leader of the service guild. And they really, I wish I could show the cards, but I interpreted them as like, I am very internally harmonized and very unified. And then the image for the people was like sticks facing in a bunch of different directions. And I interpreted it as like, you've gathered the right people, Tasshin. These are, in fact, the right people for this organization, for this crew, but they're incredibly different people, and they have incredibly different skills and incredibly different directions that they're going in their life. And your job is to use your internal harmony to like steer the whole and align the whole in the way that you've already aligned yourself internally. It's almost like, yeah, collective parts work. And I think the people are very different. They're at different chapters of their life. They're in different places. They have very different gifts and skills and styles of working and what they need. And it's my job to like really help cohere all of that. And so some people do really know themselves really well and know what they want. And some people are much more early in that. And some people have a lot more financial situation figured out. And some people are still figuring that out. And all of the people are absolutely the right people. And they're all very clearly love or curiosity or empowerment people. And they know that about themselves. Like I love to ask people like, hey, if you were in the service guild, which department do you think you'd be in? I've asked Christine that question before, and I was pleased because my internal answer that I asked myself before was the same one that she gave, which is a good sign.
Curiosity.
And yeah, exactly. Um, and that's a good sign. And I think that's the same with all the people there where they know like, yep, I should be in this department, but then they just are at very different places in their life, have very different gifts. And that's part of what makes it work is that the people are so different and there's diversity of perspectives and opinions and cultures and places and values. Yeah. And my question for Ananta is, I have the impression from the outside that Medley was good and really good for a lot of the people who were there, and also that there were like problems and challenges that were hard, and like that it maybe didn't go so well for some people. And then I have the impression that Yincubator, like that you hit it out of the park, and it was like a slam dunk and a grand slam or whatever. And like, I mean, I'm sure there were challenges and problems, and maybe it was also the case that it wasn't good for some people. But everything I've heard was like everyone loved it and it was amazing, and I have not heard a single like negative or difficult thing about it. And I wonder if that's true, if that matches your experience, and then if also what you feel like you learned in between, such that Yincubator was like way better.
Yeah. Definitely true.
Okay. Good job learning and growing. I love it. Like, I know I've had things I could describe that way. It was like, yeah, the first one was like good.
Wait, I'm aware that we're over the hour, but I feel like this is still like really good. How do you guys feel okay going to like definitely under like 90 minutes, but good?
I have to go in 20 minutes or so, but I'd love to keep going
perfect.
as well. It does
Yeah,
feel
I'm
juicy.
very curious to hear this next part.
Cool. I'm good with that. Okay. I think the biggest, okay, well, there's a few different, since I'm just gonna like spitball, or is that the right word to just freely talk? Yeah. Okay. One of them is like, Yincubator was for me, like kind of last year, I started really diligently trying to only bite off what I could chew, like as an exploration. Previously, everything I've done in my life has been biting off like way more than I could chew. I think there is a part of me that associated that with like ambition. Like if you're not struggling, you're not being ambitious or something like that. And yeah, so Medley was just like way more than I could actually handle. And yeah, with Yincubator, there was a lot of like precision there in understanding what my own capacity was, what like the hosting team's capacity was, and like not promising more than that. Like we initially had a lot of other ideas, like, oh, maybe we'd add like a corporate retreat to it and like, try to bring this thing to like non-curated people and that sort of thing. And just kind of ended with like, nope, don't have the capacity for that. We're gonna like stick to what it is that we can hold. And so it was like in like insanely held container, like perfectly held container. Um, I think also they were both very like transformative spaces. Um, and Medley was my first time holding that, and I didn't really like know how. And I was still very early in my own journey of like understanding boundaries and yeses and nos and like projection and emotional regulation and all that. Um, and I think a lot of the people who were like at the residency, for example, were also like at a similarly early level in their own explorations of that stuff. Um, and so, yeah, we were all going through like very intense transformative processes. And I think we were kind of all like like echo chambering, like like we were all very hypersensitive people, for example. And like when something is off with someone, you can kind of like detect it in yourself, and then like kind of if you don't know how to regulate it, it can get amplified. So we'd just all be like amplifying this like this um triggering or whatever you want to call it, like this kind of discontent energy off of each other without like a good ground. um we were also like all in one big glass room, like 17 people with different different like intentions, um like
Glass?
some people, yeah, it was mostly window, yeah, and not many walls at Medley. Yeah, so like some people would be like there for focus work, and some people would be like dance break and like socializing, and um so yeah, it was like kind of a vibe war sometimes.
Hmm. Vibe war.
Yeah. And I think in contrast, like the incubator, we kind of had a lot of alignment of intention, and we had like a whole arc to how like Christine said, the first 2 weeks were devoted to like deeply resetting. It was like a New Year's retreat, lots of like reflection. We didn't even have a calendar for that time. Or I mean, I guess we did, but it was empty. Um
There was no
it was
like
it
schedule.
was
Yeah. It was
yeah,
like jarring when we put up a schedule. We're like,
yeah. It was actually it was very like dramatic. Someone put up a schedule, but it was like too early for like too early in the experience for most of us. And we're just like, um, yeah. So, but like over time, it became more like, by week 4 and 5, we were, up late having parties and like co-creating things and like doing musical jams and like all this stuff. So we had an arc that we had shared, and people kind of self-selected when they wanted to come in based on their own intentions. Um, yeah, I think like by the time actually a lot of the same people came to the Medley residency and to the incubator. There was like maybe 6 people overlapping. Um, and yeah, so we were all like a lot further along on our personal journeys too. And so like when tensions came up, we could just like clear them immediately. Um, and there was like this was my first experience being in the incubator, was my first experience being in a transformative container where like it was extremely graceful. Like normally when people are going through really big emotional processes, it destabilizes the container in some way. Um, but with this, there was just like a mutual acceptance of like, okay, yeah, we know you're going through a process. We see it. We will like be here if you need holding for it. But I will not take any responsibility for it. I will just be here like
Mhm.
lovingly. Um, and I think that stance was also really important. Like, I think sometimes when you're a community builder, people tend to project their issues onto you. Like this happens a lot with like if you become like a hologram for like their parents sometimes. And so then I'll like their, you know, unresolved issues then get like projected on you. Um and yeah, I guess like going in this time was very much like, no, I'm here. I will support you through your process if you need it. There's so many other people who can support you, but you know, this is like, you know, a thing that it's okay to go through. I'm not your mom. I'm not your dad. I'm I'm not gonna jump in and try to like save you from this thing. Um, so yeah, on the hosting team too, like when things would come up, basically we would also just be very mindful like of our own role in dynamics and like patterns that we did or didn't want to participate in. Um, and I think that helped a lot too.
I love to see it, and thank you for answering in such detail. And it makes me feel proud of you that you've
Mhm.
grown so much and are able to, yeah, do ambitious stuff in a way that is within your scope and current capabilities. And that's also how you become more ambitious and more capable of doing things over time. So I love to see it.
Oh, thank you.
It's fun to hear. That was a great question. Like, it's almost like learning to we would talk about, like, scoping projects, right, Tasshin? And
Mm-hmm.
I definitely, like, am a curious person, and I do try things out. I, like, try to open doors, you know? I'm like and I've definitely, bitten off more than I can chew in the past, and then, like, suffered the consequences of finding out, and I've been like, "Oh god," like, um, that I, like, threw this one party that, like, was way more than I could handle, and I knew it because I was so stressed out. I was, like,
Mm-hmm.
highly dysregulated, and now I'm like, "Okay, like, maybe I should" like, I think this latest party I threw went really well because it was scoped perfectly, and I think that is, like, a skill you have to learn. Even in
Mm-hmm.
work, right? You, like I feel like a more junior IC wouldn't know how to, like, estimate the amount of time or effort that goes into a project or initiative. And then, like, as you get older, you're like, "Oh, yeah, I'm the one scoping out all of these projects for people because I know, like, a rough idea of, like, how much time and effort will it take?" Like and it's not just, like, the work, right? It's like, oh, relationships and, like, collaboration, like, what does that take?
Mm.
Um, but that was really cool to hear and not to, like, um I think you mentioned, like, the people, like, being like, especially what you mentioned about, where you are in your journey and also, like, being able to regulate even when others were going through, like, a lot of emotional processing. I felt that a lot in Incubator. I was like, "Wow, this is" it's what I talk about when I say there was, um, like, more than critical mass of, like, self energy, or, like, secure self, um love that, like, it because most people were able to be grounded, that if one person or a few had, like, a moment and were triggered and dysregulated, we could all hold the field, you know, like, the field did not collapse.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, there's the people, there's, like, the self energy, there's, like, the scoping. Was there other stuff that, like, changed between Medley and Incubator?
Mm, yeah, I guess I'll also echo like the again what I said earlier about like the like knowing myself and the type of things I like
Mm.
and don't like to do. Um, so like one thing that was really cool at the incubator was that I and Laz and Nikki and Jocelyn, who are my collaborators, we all had like insanely complementary like edges and strengths and like things we disliked and didn't like doing. So like as an example, when like new people would show up to the house, Jocelyn and Nikki were like, "Oh, I want to be the greeters. I want to be the people that like go drive and like tour them through the house and like whatever." And like for me, I really like when my nervous system can just take you in for 24 hours. You know, I'm kind of like a cat. Like I want to hide behind a chair and just like feel you out. And then like, you know, after 24 hours, we can like be friends, right?
Yeah.
And like, I got that opportunity at the incubator, um, like, it was just so nice. Like, I could just always be in my element and never kind of force myself to, like, do the other things. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but, like, yeah, that contrast was very, apparent between Medley and the Incubator.
Like the role you take on, sort of. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. The space was also beautiful. Like you mentioned, um, Medley having a lot of windows, but like at Incubator, it was like on this beautiful farmhouse, um,
Yeah.
out in nature. Like I felt it was nice to go
Ooh.
out and run, and it was like in
Yeah.
these beautiful like hills. Yeah.
I think being out in the middle of nowhere was also, yeah, quite grounding. So, so something I find really cute and funny from the incubator is that people would just like message the Telegram group being like, "Hey, I'm gonna go do some anger release by the pool. Like, don't mind me." Just like a warning. I'm gonna be like, yeah, like screaming, and like we had space for that. Whereas like when you're like, someone tried screaming at Medley once, and it was, like, a little bit unsettling. You could, like, hear it on the street and stuff, and, like, it's just it's, like, not not as permissive to do that in a city. Mhm.
I can imagine. I think we're running a little bit low on time. Um, Tasha, I'm curious if you have things you want to add on or speak to, um,
Hmm.
continuing on this conversation, or things you want to bring up. We did not get to a lot of the questions. We just talked, which is great. Uh, but I actually think we did hit on a lot of things. Conflict management, facilitator responsibility, bad actors, tension and stress in the community, how to handle it when someone isn't a good fit. What does too much scaffolding look like? Any funny stories about fucking up that turned out all right in the end?
Hmm.
And then I think we covered a lot of like what I was thinking, like I was curious about. I just asked in the moment, but if anything jogs you guys here, we can speak to those and then wrap up.
The thing that's coming up for me is a phrase that I really like to say, and I would love more people to have in the ecosystem, which is "we flourish together."
Mm.
For me, it's really obvious that a success for Christine or a success for Ananta or for any of our friends or the people we're connected to is actually a success for all of us. So like Ananta having a success at Medley or having a success at Incubator is really a success for everyone. And
Mm.
in order to have more of those kinds of victories and wins and successes, um, we need to help each other. And so uh, the Service Guild is really at a stage where I and we could use a lot more help. And like I need money and I need advice and I need mentorship and I need coaching and I need infrastructure. And like there's so many software subscriptions that would be amazing to have, but they're so expensive. And like um, I don't know if there's some way that you feel moved to get involved or want to help. That would be very appreciated. And of course, it has to be something we're actually in a position to receive, but help is really appreciated. And we will use it to help all the people that we're connected to, and ideally all beings. That's really the goal. And I also, if you feel moved to help Ananta or Christine, like these are amazing people who are doing such good things in the world, and I'm sure that they need help and support. And community organizers cannot do their work alone. It's really work that we do together and that we need support from other people from. And it can be really lonely and really painful and really confusing and scary and overwhelming. And so, like, just giving these people a hug or, supporting them emotionally is so welcome, or giving them. I think I saw Ananta say this a while ago. It's like so helpful to give a testimonial if you were at a transformative space and it was meaningful to you to be like, hey, I really appreciated this and this changed my life. And to say that aloud or in a way that they can record it and remember it for themselves or share it for a grant proposal or something. There's so many ways to help. And, like if one doesn't feel good, then you just do a different one that does feel good for you. It doesn't matter which way, but we flourish together and we need help together. And I would encourage someone who listened to this to follow through on, if there's something that they learned, to learn more about it or to ask to see if they can get involved or to help. And That would feel really great if someone felt resonant with this and wanted to help one of us. That would be amazing.
Thank you for saying that. Well, I'll link
Yeah, that's
everything.
awesome.
You guys can send me, Patreon links to like information about what you're working on. I'll put it in the description after. Onto any last thoughts?
I was just admiring how you were able to say that. That's something I'm still working on, is figuring out how to like take index of things I need help with and be open to it and broadcast it out. Yeah, so really cool to watch you.
Cool. Well, this was really fun.
Yeah, thanks for having us,
This was
Christine. This
so
was awesome.
cool. I was like, okay, I really want Ananta and Tasshin to come together and talk with me about community building, and I've been feeling this for like weeks.
It's
So
almost like you smelled it around the corner and then it came and it was really good, delicious food, just like you thought it would be.
I'm so glad we recorded this, because if we were just chatting in person, this would be exactly the kind of conversation that I would want like recorded for a podcast. But it was lovely to see you guys. I'm actually really enjoying doing podcasts as a way to like both catch up and have like a really cool like creative, asset come out of it. So yeah, sending love. Good seeing you guys.
Thanks, Christine.
Thanks,
Bye.
Christine.
All right, bye everyone.